we find a little baby girl. She's an orphan, and she has been left on a mountaintop. And she washes up, well, at a school that teaches martial arts and how to work with weapons. And they don't know what they're going to do with this baby girl. A baby girl? She's barely old enough to hold a fork. We better take her down to the bottom of the mountain. There's an orphanage there. And so the very youngest teacher, he goes to strap this little baby girl onto his back, and she takes his dagger and holds him at knife point. And he is a very young teacher. He says, oh, please don't hurt me, help! And all the other teachers come, and the oldest teacher says, I think we might have to train this nameless one. And so began her work in martial arts and weapons. And after she had come back alive after her third certain death experience, that same oldest teacher named her Phuong, because Phuong means phoenix in Vietnamese. Phuong, she was sure that she was related to the famous Trung sisters, but she kept that to herself. She really concentrated on her training, and she excelled. Pretty soon, she could beat even the masters. And so they sent her out into the world. And she sold her sword for a long time, and she became more and more proficient at all of the martial arts. And then, one day, she woke up in her camp, and she could just tell someone was there. So she very, very cleverly made her body relax. She gave no sign that she saw anyone else as she put on her armor, got her weapons ready, and then she drew her sword and ran to where the stealthy one had been skulking in the shadows, and she brought her sword up, pressing her advantage of surprise, and she was parried. And the two, she and this other warrior, began to fight, and every move, match for match, each for each, they struck and parried and twirled. And at some point during the day, where the fight lasted until sunset, it ceased to be a fight and began to be a dance. And at some point, maybe it was the flash of Phuong's eyes, maybe it was the twitch of a smile in Phuong's mouth, that they fell in love. And so, when they were done with their dance, they decided that they would never be apart. And he introduced himself, I am Phuong. And she said, oh, you are a dragon? He said, well, I am the dragon prince. My parents named me Long, but it is aspirational, not ancestral. And she said, I am Phuong. And he said, oh, my lady Phoenix. And so they went off on adventures together. And one day, their adventures brought them to a monastery, and they looked at each other. By now, they were of one mind. They decided this would be the day they married. And when the couple stood and had just declared their intention to stay together for the rest of their lives, the sun disappeared from the sky. There had been a white streak and then a red streak across the sky, and then boom! They were plunged into darkness. Everywhere they looked, over the whole of the world as near as they could tell. The sun had disappeared from the sky. Well, the bridal party, of course, had lanterns, and so they lit them. And when the bride and groom could see each other, they knew they were in agreement again. We will go and find the sun, and we will bring it back. And so they got themselves each fully armed and rode off on their horses, carrying lanterns. Now you would think it would be easy to find the sun. It is, after all, the brightest thing we know, but everywhere they looked, there was only darkness and a rumor that somewhere in that direction there was light. And so they rode from town to town and village to village, following the rumor, until Phuong said, "Look, I see it." And they doused their lanterns. Just above the earth, there was a subtle glow coming from underneath the ground. They rode closer, and at the last village before, where they could see the glow peeking through the earth, they heard that there was a dragon cave. No, a dragon underground ocean in a cave in that direction. Phuong looked at her beloved, now her husband. She said, "Are these your people? Aspirational, not ancestral." They snuck forward, the two of them together, and they peeked into this enormous hole. They could hear the sound of waves. They could see something flowing. And then they heard the singing. It was not singing the way you and I normally hear it. Play, fly, steal. Play, fly, steal. Two voices. Play, fly, steal. And when they looked down, they could see them. The red and the white dragon each had sticks in their hands. They were beating them together and picking up the glowing ball that must have been the sun. They were tossing it in the air, and then the other one would catch it and try to plunge it into the waters of the ocean. And just at the last minute, every single time, the other dragon would steal it back, and the whole cycle would start again. Play, fly, steal. When the dragons were just to the other side of where Phuong was peeking in at the top, she jumped and landed on the shore of the ocean up against the wall of the cave. What could Phuong do? He jumped as well and landed in the ocean. She had to pull him out, but the two of them stood and waited for their moment. And when the dragons seemed suitably distracted, Phuong leapt onto the back of the white dragon, and Long leapt onto the back of the red dragon, and there was such a roar and so much motion, for the warriors and the dragons were fighting each other. And if you had been lucky enough to watch, you maybe couldn't have told who was winning, until at last Phuong took her sword and pressed it up against the underbelly of the white dragon. And she said, "If you do not promise to let us take the sun, I will stab the underbelly of this dragon." And then there was dragon laughter. And the red dragon said, "I would not save her." And just then, Long took his sword and pressed it up against the underside of the throat of the red dragon and said, "Perhaps to save your own skin then." And the dragons did agree, and they plunged without the sun into the ocean and disappeared. And Long and Phuong, they picked up the dragon's sticks and carefully, and with all the strength they seemed to have left, they lifted the sun and threw it up, out of the hole onto the earth. And then they climbed out after it. But to their horror, they saw that the sun was burning everywhere it touched. And so quickly they got the sticks again and they threw the sun high into the sky. And it went up and up. And then it fell back down to the earth and began to burn the jungle everywhere they looked. Well, they did not know what to do. They could fight, but this seemed beyond them. And then they noticed the villagers who had told them about the dragon's ocean, the dragon's cave, and coming forward toward the sun was a little girl. And Phuong, she very nearly lost her mind. Stay back! But the girl said, "I have an idea. See the palm trees? If you stack them, you could put the sun where it belongs in the sky." And everyone agreed. And so they did. They stacked the palm trees, Phuong and Long. They threw the sun to the top of the palm trees, and they heard a click as the sun went back into its track. And the palm trees did burn, but the sun now could follow its everyday path. And as for Long and Phuong, well, the dragon prince and the lady phoenix, as far as I know, they're adventuring still.